Beautiful souls, welcome back or welcome to The Hawk and I. My name is Lana Zelinsky and I work in the spirit dimensions. And as always in all my videos, please take what resonates and you're welcome to leave the rest right here. I'm talking today about different versions of ourselves. How many times have you said it? If I only knew then what I know now. We all have multiple different versions of ourselves. Every single day, I believe that there is a new version of me that comes out into the physical world to learn and explore. And I kind of sit with previous versions of myself, and I thought I would do a video sharing how I have gone back in time to heal different versions of myself. And I do hope that you can take a little bit of these tips to kind of help you sit with previous versions of yourself. We all are here to learn. I have said that multiple times, I know, but it is so true. And previous versions of ourselves, whether it be a very young version of ourselves, the teen years, the adolescent years, 20s or 30s, depending on how old you are, or even yesterday, we are constantly growing and evolving. Healing for me has been a journey. I also believe that we are in a continuous mode of healing because we are continuously learning. Now, I am a very visual learner. I am also very hands-on, and I like to sit with previous versions of me. And how do I do that? I literally will pull up a chair and put it next to me. And if there is a part of my life, a version of me that I feel needs some healing or I need to spend some time with, perhaps I wasn't very kind to myself during that learning, or perhaps that version of me was going through something very difficult, and that learning is trickling into my current life experiences because I haven't sat with that version of Lana to offer her support, to offer her love, and to understand the decisions that she made. So what do? I literally pull up a chair next to me and I literally will sit and face that chair. I'll literally have a look at the previous version of me and I'll bring that time frame, that timeline into my awareness. I may even pull out a picture of myself from that timeline and put it on the chair and sit there with her. And when I feel that I've got that time back in my awareness, I simply have a talk. I literally will talk to myself with Lana. You were doing your best with what you knew. And I think sometimes we forget that previous versions of ourselves, we were doing the best with what we knew. And I think that when we remember the younger versions of ourselves or the previous versions of ourselves, we're functioning with the knowledge that we had, with making decisions with what we felt at that time was right. Now, the other thing with previous versions of ourselves, and just think about this for just a moment, we all have a higher self. Even previous versions of ourselves had a higher self. So I'm going to just use myself as an example. When I was 16 years old, I was going through some very interesting times on my journey. And my higher self at 16 years old had some knowledge as well, had some knowledge on the lessons that needed to be learned in that timeline. And that 16-year-old version of me was functioning from that place. And perhaps I wasn't in full alignment back then as I am now. I'm in better alignment now than what I was when I was 16. But the higher self within the 16-year-old version of me did have some knowledge on the lessons that needed to be learned. And sometimes I needed to touch something that may have been hot in order to learn the lessons. And that version of me, that 16-year-old version of me that was learning and sifting and sorting through life and was, tripping and falling and learning as she went, I talked to her like that. Lana, you may not have made the best of decisions, but you were making the decisions from where you were on your journey. And your higher self was taking you on some adventures with learning the lessons so that when I got to this stage of my life, I had some glorious opportunities to sort it all out. And my higher self did know the lessons that I needed to learn. and in a lot of ways was preparing me for where I would be on my journey today. I also acknowledge that version. So I have the chair beside me, and I will literally acknowledge, Lana, you were doing the best that you could with what you had for tools at that time. And I understand that you were doing the best that you could in that version of yourself. And when we kind of tap into different versions of ourselves with a little bit of compassion and a little bit of understanding, and reminding that version of you that you were doing the best you could from where you were standing. We're extremely hard on ourselves, and I think that we look at our previous experiences, our past experiences, and we hold that perhaps didn't go very well. We often hold ourselves in a corner within us without truly embracing the experience and the learning that we were doing. This even works for me on things that may not have gone very well, that may have been out of my control, things that may have happened that, I wasn't understanding at the time. I sit with that version of myself. And if all I can do is literally embrace that version of myself, because sometimes a lot of us go through a lot of really dark, crappy stuff. And sometimes it's a matter of putting that version of yourself in the chair and simply loving that version. Just simply, Lana, that was a horrible experience that you went through, and I just need to hold you. I just need to let you know how loved you are and how loved you were. And there are moments for me that there really are no physical world words that can shift or change or soften the experience. Sometimes it's just an energy of unconditional love for that version of yourself. Because, we all have had experiences that have left us with some scars, and it's not necessarily about healing the scar so that it's no longer there. It's about healing that version of yourself with some unconditional love and understanding and compassion, and taking away the feeling of shame, or taking away the feeling of guilt when you just insert you were doing the best you could with what you were faced with. And I will literally talk to myself with those words of understanding and those words of you were doing the best you could. And sometimes I will sit there and repeat it over and over until I feel that that version of me heard and felt how I feel about the person that was doing the best that she could at that time. The other thing that quite often works for some people, if talking to the chair with the picture of yourself doesn't resonate with you, quite often writing yourself a letter. Dear 25-year-old Lana, this was your experience, and you were doing the best that you could. And sometimes reading that letter out loud and then releasing it with whatever means resonates with you, whether you burn it or allow it to go. We need to spend a little bit of time in the element or the vibration of healing previous versions of ourselves. I personally find it very therapeutic. I find it it's a part of my spiritual techniques and spiritual toolbox, and my own spiritual way of helping myself understand the lessons and the different versions of myself. And you don't have to go back to 10, 20, 30 years ago. Sometimes I will sit with the version of who I was yesterday, even if it's something that I didn't understand at the time, and I struggled with, whether it be worthiness, or I struggled with anything that I may be struggling with, even the small things. If you're struggling with eating properly, and you had a rough day yesterday, and you're the type of person that tends to beat yourself up over having a bad moment, sitting with that version of yourself, reminding yourself that it's okay that you were doing the best with the mindset that you were in that day. It doesn't have to be the great big, lessons in life. It can be even the small things. I remind myself of that all the time. If I wasn't very patient with myself yesterday, I will remind myself of that. You were doing the best you could with what was going on around you in the world yesterday. And I think that when we kind of insert that type of healing on our journey, it kind of allows us to soften how we feel about the lessons that we've learned. It kind of softens how we feel about previous versions of ourselves. Because let's be honest, we all have versions of ourselves that were very difficult, or we may be ashamed of, or we may feel that we could have done better. But you know what? You didn't know then what you know now. And sometimes the lessons were extremely tough and hard to understand or make sense of. And sometimes choice and free will got in there as well, that kind of taught us some things. I'll be honest, there have been choices where I knew better but made them anyway. But the lesson needed to be learned, and the tripping and the falling and getting back up needed to occur. I do hope that this little exercise on sitting with previous versions of you brings you a little bit of healing. Give it a try. Insert your own healing practices. I firmly believe that we are always in a healing mode from our experiences here in the physical world. And I try really hard to tap into my own healing on a daily basis. Healing can be very difficult. It can be mucky, but it can also be the little things, the healing from how you may have treated yourself yesterday, or just the little things. It's insert healing here, insert some love here, and soften and allow the experience to take you where you need to go. I am wishing you, as always, so much love, light, blessings, and a spirit guided day.